Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, where we'll be talking about how to solve unique business requirements with Eloqua Cloud Apps. My name is Richard Holder, and I am the head of marketing for Forethought Marketing. And I've been here for almost 4 years. And prior to that, I worked as director of marketing operations for Visa. And joining me today is my colleague, Linda David. Linda, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thanks, Richard. Hi, my name's Linda. I'm a senior marketing operations consultant here at Forethought Marketing. I'm coming up on 20 years experience with Eloqua. I started as a customer and then I joined Oracle Eloqua, and then the Oracle acquisition. So spent 10 years in a variety of different roles, including partner enablement, which is where I met the folks here at Forethought. Here at Forethought Marketing, I really enjoy working with a variety of clients on strategic and complex, solving complex problems. And a lot of times it involves, some of those solutions involve our cloud apps. So excited for today's presentation.
Great, thank you, Linda. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this, so if you would like to share this with your colleagues, or refer to it later, a link will be sent to you tomorrow. We will be having a time for Q&A at the end. We'll also see if we can answer questions that might come up during the webinar, but feel free to ask them at any time. Please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. That helps us keep things organized to make sure that we get all of the questions answered. All right, so with that over with, let's take a look at our agenda. So we're going to talk about 3 use cases today. One is about sending emails that meet specific legal criteria. Another is monitoring and alerting if there are potential data issues with a data import. And the last one is how to manage costs while maintaining historical information about previous interest that a customer has shown. Moving to our first case study. This company is a global financial services company with thousands of customers and partners around the world. They use Eloqua extensively for all of their marketing communication, but for certain communication, they still have a legacy in-house solution that they use. They wanted to transition to Eloqua because it would give them greater performance. They'd be able to send more quickly. They would also get better metrics so that they could give their management reporting on how many people had seen and opened and clicked on those messages, something that their in-house solution did not have. The special legal requirement was that because it was making announcements of changes like pricing changes or an agreement change, the legal team wanted to make sure that each contact for each account received a copy of that email. So that's not something that comes out of the box with Eloqua, and so they were looking for solutions. These account and contact details are stored in a custom object, so the information is available to Eloqua, it just can't use it directly. So if we look at the next slide, this is how a normal campaign works. As you can see here, if someone needs to be sent the email, either because they fit in the segment because of account data or contact data or something in a custom object, they'll be sent the email, but they'll only receive one. On the next slide, you'll see that this doesn't work for this particular use case because they need to have an email for each account. So if we have the manager here and he has 3 different accounts, he needs a solution that's going to cycle through these 3 different account records and merge data from the custom object into each of these emails to make sure that they are personalized and reflect the full notice as required by legal. So what solution they need is they need something that can walk through all of these matching custom object records. Well, let's take a look at what this looks like.
Thanks, Richard. So the challenge that Richard identified is that when you merge in a custom object field into an email, you're limited to a single custom object. So Eloqua does give you the flexibility or options to determine which custom object. So you want the last modified, last created, first created, but you can't send the email merging or multiple emails merging in information from different custom objects. So that's where the many-to-one app comes in. So while this is running, it's going to hit the first step. The use case is generally there'd be an email instead of this wait step here. And if we look at the configuration, it's quite powerful for the criteria that you can define for what custom object record gets selected. And so we first start with selecting the custom object that contains the data. You then select the custom object field, and you have a variety of operators that you could choose from. And once you have those selected, you set the evaluation order. So it also allows for complex logic. So you can do ands and ors. And then finally, this is where the magic comes in. This app will pull the data from the custom object field that you select to the contact field that's selected. So for this demo, we're going to populate and update the first name, last name, category, and birth date. And then finally, these are used to identify when the custom object record has been processed. So as you'll see in this demo, the example records that we have two custom objects that we want to pull the data from. So in order for the app to know that a custom object record has already been processed and that data has been mapped to the contact, the email has been sent, we set a field, a tracking field, and mark it as yes. And then, or actually it writes the campaign ID. So the ID you can see at the top here. This is really powerful because it allows you to use this many-to-one app in multiple campaigns. And within this one campaign, it will not process the record that has the campaign ID of this specific campaign. There's also a field on the contact record that identifies whether there are additional custom object records to process. So if there are additional, it'll mark a yes. So it basically looks back through the list of the custom object records that meet the filter criteria that was identified above. If there's additional records that don't have the tracking field populated with this campaign ID, it will put in a yes. If all of them have been processed, it'll flag a no, and that signals the end of the cycle for the many-to-one app to go through. So this app runs, I'm going to refresh and my contacts have made it through to the wait step here. So the app runs against the contacts that are sent through it. We have a decision in the campaign, and this is what's looking to see if there's additional custom object records to process. If it does, it's going to send that contact back through. And then if not, the reset part of the app will change or blank out the custom object tracking field as well as the contact field that's used to track if there's additional custom object records to process. So let's take a look. The contacts have gone through. We're going to take a look at George here. And so he's gone through. Custom object records to process is yes. The fields we're pulling down from the custom object record are populated here. And I'll show you for George's contact, he has two records. So the first has the birth date of August 21st and is a customer. And then the second one, see, the birth date is September 15th, and it's a blank value there. So this one processed with the first one. If I move those through to process again. Usually the email will get sent and then it'll automatically move to this decision step, check and reprocess, and then send the next email using the fields from that custom object. So another thing I want to point out here is it is extremely valuable to merge in and make sure you're getting the right data from the right custom object into the email for field merges. But with that data that gets pulled down from the custom object to the contact, it's now available for if you have more advanced filtering or other decisions that you want to make using those custom object fields, that you can use that to evaluate if you have different paths of different emails you want to send, if you're using dynamic content in your email, which depends on the values that are pulled down from the custom objects. So it's more than just merging in those contact fields. You can also use that data that's on the contact, which will be available until this goes through again and it gets refreshed with the updated or the next one. So for the purposes of this demo, I'm not going to wait for this to process. Eloqua can take a little bit of time sometimes with that decision, but I'll turn it back over to Richard.
Great. Thank you, Linda, for that excellent overview. So moving on to our next customer, they are a regional credit union, and they are a very progressive user of technology and systems to engage with their members. They have a steady flow of offers and incentives that they come up with and they run on a continuous basis. They call these evergreen campaigns, and they could be running every month, every week, and they're constantly feeding new members into these, or members that qualify because of the different range of services that they have, or services that they are eligible or they want to upsell them to. The data that is used to populate and run these evergreen campaigns is generated not information that's stored natively in Eloqua. It's generated by an external system that's managed by non-Eloqua users, who then take these files and store them on a file server that can be accessed by Eloqua. They're using the native data Eloqua data import that run unattended. Now these are scheduled, and they can be run frequently, daily, or more frequently. The challenge with the Eloqua data imports is that if there is bad data, it can cause errors, and those errors are difficult to troubleshoot for two reasons. The first one is the error notices are generic, and so depending on how many different imports are running at the same time, you're not really able to find out which campaign or which import failed. It's very difficult. It's also very time consuming, even if you know where to look, to track down and troubleshoot those imports. And this is impacting their revenue stream, because if they don't get the offers out in a timely manner, and it delays their ability to upsell or to add new services to them. So this missing data and these bad imports are causing problems for them. So they contacted us and says, can you help us? And so they needed a solution that would check at the correct time to see if the data had been imported. And if it wasn't available and the campaign was not going to run, that they would get alerted. So the solution that we created for them was a solution that would allow them to check a segment on a schedule to see if there was data inside of it. So let's take a look at what that looks like.
Thanks, Richard. So the Segment Monitor app was a custom app that we developed for this client. And what this app does is it monitors a specific segment and notifies the email addresses that are entered within the configuration of this app when the segment has no contacts. So this is really critical, as Richard mentioned, that we don't want this campaign to run, or the campaign isn't going to run because the segment is blank. And so when it's a business critical or really important messaging that needs to get out, it prevents data or the emails not being sent. So within the app settings, because this is a custom app, we can, based on the requirements, identify, well, what are the configuration elements that need to be set up within the app. In this case, there's a scheduler as well, because we want to make sure that we're checking the segment after the import is expected to have run. So this is for this specific instance of the app, it's running once a month at 12 p.m. because the data import is supposed to run just prior to that. So it's quite powerful that it sends an email to alert these people that the segment has no contacts. There's a description because there are multiple instances of this app within Eloqua, so they know which specific campaign has been or segment has been impacted. And then they can, the people can go check on the data import and see, was there error with the connection? Was there error with some of the data? So quickly address and fix any issues preventing the data import.
Great, thank you, Linda. All right, so now we have our final customer use case. This is an international cybersecurity software vendor. They offer products all the way from home and consumer users, all the way to large enterprises. They generate a high volume of leads and new contacts through free trials and online forums, and their conversions are quite healthy. The information about trials and inquiries is stored in custom objects so that they record the area of interest, whether it was, product A or B, whether it was a consumer or an enterprise product. Because of the volume of free trials and so forth, they also have a very proactive data hygiene policy for the contacts they have sitting in Eloqua. They are deleting them if they exceed the threshold that they've set for them. And as a result of that, that history is lost temporarily. Now, it's often they see that these deleted contacts will come back later for a new trial. Maybe they want to reevaluate, or maybe they started out with a consumer offering and now they're interested in something for their business. So they're going to do another offer and they return to this system. And they wanted to give their salespeople the ability to have that continuity between the two activities. And because the information about these interactions in the areas of interest were stored in custom objects, they had the data available, but it wasn't connected to the contact. So the solution they needed was the ability to regularly reconnect custom objects to contacts if they return back into the system, and then they'd have the full history for both the first, the second, or third, or however many times they were recorded in the custom object. So let's take a look at how that works.
Thanks, Richard. So this app actually started as a custom app to meet specific business requirements, and then we productized it because it has so many helpful use cases where this app can help. So it's quite simple. This is implemented on the program canvas. So you have your segment that has the criteria for the contacts you want to pull through. And then it's going to run through the app. And on the configuration screen, you select which custom objects, and there can be multiple. So this example shows 2, but I've seen instances where it's like 10 or 20. So if you have 100 custom objects, there's might be data in those that doesn't apply or is not critical to be relinked or remapped to the contact. So you identify which custom objects you do want to select and save, and then the app does the rest. So as Richard mentioned, this is really good, especially with Eloqua having basing the cost on the number of contacts. So if you are regularly deleting contacts, and then they can re-enter into the system, run them through this program, and it'll relink any of those custom object records that would have been unmapped when the record was deleted.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Well, that concludes the presentation portion of our webinar today. We'll now move into the Q&A, and it looks like we have several questions. So let me start out with the first one. The first question is, where can I find a list of all of your cloud apps? So that's a great question. There are actually two places you can find those. The first is the Oracle Marketplace, where you'll find all of our cloud apps listed there. You'll also see a list on our website under products. As Linda mentioned, we have a lot of cloud apps listed there, but some of these custom cloud apps are not listed there. So if you have a question about a business problem that's not solved, get in touch with us and we'll be able to answer that for you. All right, so let's go on to the next question. This is a great one. I have an idea, but can't find a solution for Eloqua. How long does it take to create a custom app? I guess that's for you, Linda.
Sure, that is a great question. So what we do is we sit down and we understand your requirements, and then come up with a solution that's going to solve the challenges that you're facing. And then we'll do a detailed design document, run that past or work with your team, get that approved, and then work on the full development and testing of the app. So the timing of that, it really depends on the scope and how involved the app is, but it generally happens pretty quickly. So with that unlinked CO mapper, unlinked CO mapper app, for example, that one took about a week to develop and test and get into the customer's hands. And we've had others that are more extensive that can take a little bit longer, but it is a fairly quick process.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we have one final question, and it looks like it's for me to take. It says, do you offer free trials? And the answer is yes, we do have free trials. You can just go to our website, locate the cloud app that you're interested in, and then click on the free trial button. We offer a 10-day free trial, so almost immediately after you submit it, the cloud app is available for you to install and use. So if you have an idea or you'd like to try something, feel free to take one of our cloud apps for a spin and then get back in touch with us, and we'll make sure that you're satisfied. And that concludes our question and answer. That's all we have today. I want to thank everyone who attended today. We thank you for your time. We hope that this was valuable for you. After the webinar ends, you will receive a survey. We invite you to give us some feedback on how we can improve these for future events and get ideas from you on topics you'd like us to discuss. Thank you and have a great day.